Hello, everybody. So we are going to be chatting today about the out of control dogs in sport. So specifically in sport, mostly agility, because we have the lovely Tristram from the Canine Sports Coach here. But also I might just include a little bit about obedience because I've been doing both sports this year and it's happened in both sports. So yeah, welcome, Jo. Do you just want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Jo Tristram. I compete at top level agility. I'm lucky to compete internationally with my dogs, and as well as training face to face, I have an online platform called the Canine Sports Coach.
Fantastic. So we had a chat earlier in the year because there was I hate to say it, a phase. There was a lot of incidents, shall we call it, where different people were posting online about having dogs run into their dogs' rings while they were competing and all of the problems that it was causing. Now, obviously, that it doesn't just happen at one time. It can happen at any times, but it's what sort of got us chatting about this topic, wasn't it? Back in the summer. It's just taken us a little while to get together to actually share some of our experiences. So obviously we've both run or competed with several different dogs of different temperaments. We've both had reactive dogs, we've both had chasey dogs, and we've had slightly easier ones too at some point for different things. Jo's now trying to think which one was slightly easier.
They've all got their things, haven't they?
They have. They've all got their little nuances that you have to put more effort into certain areas with their training, don't you? So we wanted to chat a little bit about the whole of this. So we didn't want to shame anybody for it happening because, let's face it, who knows what's going to happen really the first time we put a baby dog in the ring. But we want to talk about how we can minimize the likelihood of misadventures happening beforehand, so we're as confident as we can possibly be. Obviously the dogs are another living being, but looking at it from all angles, because it can really impact the dog that is in the ring that the other dog runs into, the owners, the person who owns the dog that runs into the ring. Obviously they can feel embarrassed, and all sorts of emotions there as well. So we want to look at it from that point of view and then also give some tips on what we would do at the end as well with our own dogs. So one of my questions initially, Jo, is what do you think about netting around rings? Because there's always a big discussion as to, does it help? Doesn't it? What are your views on trying to prevent it through netting?
I think I see this in two different ways. So for me, the netting can be there as basically a little bit of a backup. It might make you feel a little bit better. For me, it makes me feel better. The dog definitely won't run into the ring. However, they're not foolproof, are they? And I've seen dogs go through those. And I don't mind if they're there just for a bit of comfort. But what worries me really is that people see them as an excuse or an opportunity to take a dog they think might leave. Well, that's unfair on everybody else. Of course, they're okay there as a backup for a dog that maybe has a little bit of eye or whatever, but you're pretty certain is going to stay with you. But taking a dog you think will likely leave you because there's netting, that's not okay. So I think netting's fine. I just think people need to view it differently as the final thing, just in case we have an incident, not rather than being like, oh well, it will be okay because there's netting and I don't need to worry about my dog leaving, because that I think is irresponsible, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And also it's not actually that high, is it? So it can be jumped. I've seen dogs in obedience this year jump out of netted rings. So it doesn't just happen in agility as well, with the more exciting movement of the dogs as well. So let's talk about, obviously the main thing is we can only control what we can control. So we can control our dogs. Bo unfortunately had a couple of dogs running on him this year in obedience and agility. So he was really good in that I saw the dog coming and he came to me. I took hold of his collar and so I backed away and moved him. And then in the obedience, the steward luckily got in between and shielded off the other dog. And in the agility as well, luckily the owner turned up and removed their dog. But I think although it didn't have quite as dramatic effect as what it has on some people's dogs that I've seen, where they've totally shut down in the agility ring afterwards and not wanted to run. He then started getting up in his recall, and he wouldn't just sit and stay in the obedience ring. And I do think that it was possibly that which, it was a slight difference with him, because he wasn't that confident to stay there by himself. So obviously I've trained him because he was really chasey, and I've worked with him, but I also taught him to come to me if ever anything happened. What would you do with your dogs to help if somebody else's dog ran into yours?
Hopefully I wouldn't be taking a dog in the ring that didn't love the game with me. So I know that definitely with Fade, I don't know with Vivid yet because she's too young to know, but with Fade it wouldn't matter if another dog ran in the ring. She'd probably just come to me or just stand still and be like, why have we stopped running, and would ignore the other dog unless it actually ran at her, and then but she would come to me and stop. It would be different. So in the past I've had a beardie who was really fearful of other dogs, and I spent so much time getting her in the ring and making sure that she believed she was safe in there, like that little square, even though it was just a ring rope there, she believed she was safe. And it did unfortunately happen to me once that a dog ran in the ring, but it was, it wasn't really looking at her particularly. It sort of ran by, looked at her and left. And I was very upset at the time because I'd worked so hard. But luckily, like I said at the start, my dog's, she loved agility enough that one incident hadn't, damaged her any, and she was old enough for it not to be a big deal. But I'm lucky that I've never had a dog run in the ring and tried to do anything terrible. So like we said, dogs make mistakes, and if it's that kind of thing, it is okay. And you can, if you've got a dog that is not too bothered and all it wants to do is do agility, then it's not that much of a deal. But it is important for your dog to feel safe and come to you, like you've said. And also if they're really interested only in what you two are doing, then they're more likely to come to you because they're probably annoyed it's the game stopped, I'd imagine.
And I love what you said then about having your dog as confident as possible in the ring to help her out. And I mean, obviously she was an amazing agility dog, so it wasn't just that it held her back in any way. She went right through the levels and was hugely successful. So you wouldn't have known looking at her that she'd had that start. So that is credit to you as well. So how can we help people that may be bringing a dog out to start with? So we've obviously both got youngsters ourselves, which, well, when I say we don't know what they're going to do, obviously mine, I do know what she would do. And at the moment she would run off and she would chase. So I'm going to be working through all of these things with her, just like I did with Bo as well. He used to react to dogs that are over 100 meters away. And he did that right from a puppy. So with him, like you said, with yours, I did loads of focus work with him, and I started literally at the back of the car park. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you built up her confidence, and also what you're doing at the moment with Vivid as well?
The most important thing really is having a reward, a solid reward that they want, because, for example, Vivid, she's a sheepdog, so from lines that are for doing trials, so has a very, very strong eye. So if she was allowed that stalking the ring, or she's bred to stop dogs that are moving, so watching dogs in rings is like up there. It's really, really high value for her. So I've got to have something that's really important. So establishing reward structure in the first place, if you haven't got something they want, you're already losing, aren't you? So and like you talked about starting from a distance where they can be successful, and I'm feeling that really strongly with Vivid right now, because she, you know, in some environments it's just been too much because of the noise or whatever. So I'm going to have to gradually work on that. That said, when I have taken her in, and I've had to cue at a distance or whatever so that she can be successful, and I've had people help me with that, so that they can cue and I can keep her focused on me, so that when she goes in the ring, we are rehearsing that game that she already loves. And I only ask for very simple things. She's only, you know, she's just turned 18 months today, actually, but she's nowhere near ready. And I've only put her in the ring like once or twice and literally done 2 jumps the start line. That's it, because my goal is that I need her to stay focused with me and enjoying what we always do at home in the or in a training session, and not allow her to actually be drawn by what's happening in the other ring. So good transitions, good fast rewards, not expecting too much so that there isn't failure, and then she can be like, well, actually I'm not getting a reward, so I'm going to turn and look for that other thing that I think really rewarding. I think that's really important too. So establishing, having rewards that they want so that you can actually, you know, keep them focused with you, because if you haven't got that, you're basically losing, aren't you, from the start, to get them away from something that is ultimately, particularly for border collies, a massive reinforcer.
Yeah. So with Bo, I couldn't use food, even though he would take food. It wasn't high enough value for movement for me to work with. So I had to have a separate marker word for food and toy, so that when I was working with him with those higher level distractions, then I could use my marker word for toy, because we'd built that value in the toy, rather than food. Because if there was any question mark about whether I was going to reward his behavior with food when there was the possibility to be scanning for movement, then he wasn't interested, because of that innate, you know, that intrinsic reward that he was getting. So yeah, for him, building that value on the toy, like you said. And then I also had to have a different marker word for the toy was being used rather than food. So he's the first dog that I've had to do that with, and distinguish between the two. He would take food, but as a puppy, he showed his arousal levels. When I put his food bowl down, he couldn't actually sit and wait. So I was working through that. So I was putting the food bowl down, and then I was trying to give him a piece of food, same food that was in the bowl, but because the bowl created so much arousal, he couldn't eat out of my hand. So we then had to work through that, so that he had to take one piece of food before he was allowed his food bowl. So building all of those foundations in, like you say, with actually the reward structure, so that we can use the rewards in our training, is going to be hugely important, isn't it?
Well, absolutely, yeah. I do a similar thing. We've been walking today, like everyone else, on Christmas Eve, yeah, like they obviously want to run. They want to run and race each other and stalk each other or whatever. But they have to look at me and take a food reward before they can get released, and sometimes it takes longer than others, particularly with Vivid, because she's still younger. The other two know it's got to be done, so the eye contact will come, because it's also, it's a please to be able to do the thing that they want to do, which is run away at top speed together. So it is, isn't it, setting yourself up in other scenarios where they can work through when they're high, you know, they obviously we want to race each other, but actually I want you to do this thing, I need you to look at me, before you get to do it.
Do you want to share some exercises on how you get them to look at you? Because I think this is really important. Start
eye
with
contact. Yeah, absolutely. So based on, I work through Susan's It's Your Choice from the start, like straight away. I tend to do at least one session a day where we're working for whatever food it is they're having as a really little puppy. So when food's around, it does, you know, you will always look, there will be a game of self-control around it with me, which is your default should be, if you want anything, you should be looking at me. So it starts just with simple food bowl. It's there. If you want it, you look at me and a piece of food will come, like you were talking with Bo, from the start, and then you build it up to putting it on the floor and all of that stuff, and just testing the skills around that. and then any kind of criteria game. So that game, it's your choice. If you want something, look at me. And hold my eye contact starts from there, and then you can progress that to criterias like bed work, boundary games and stuff. Same thing, like if you want to release off there, don't, but the reward will come to you. I expect eye contact in those scenarios too. And as they're young, I do gateway stuff, doorway stuff, crate stuff, so that all the time, that when you want to run and go out the back door, you've just got to show me some self-control with eye contact. So that default behavior is, if I'm excited, but I need to look at you. And actually, it's a good thing to look at you, because something good's going to come after it. It's not a punishment. You should be looking at me, something good's coming. It's that. Yeah.
Yeah. I obviously did all of those things with Bo as well. And then I used a lot of look at that from Leslie McDevitt's Control Unleashed. So when he saw something moving, I would use my marker word, then he would orient back to me, and then we would have a game, which again, then gradually translated to see the moving thing, look at me, rather than see the moving thing, have no impulse control and take off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's not fair for them. Of course they should look. It's like, someone once gave me an analogy, like if there's something there, particularly with fearful dogs, if you tell them they can't look at it, it's more terrifying, isn't it? So of course it's okay to look, but you should be like, we've looked, I'm going to look back at you because I'm going to get a reward if I do, or something good's going to happen if I come back to you, and all of that stuff. The reaction should be, I look at you, as you rightly said.
So I don't know if you do this as well. I also, with Bo, because most of that sort of thing was when we were fairly stationary. With him, I also taught an emergency stop as well, so that I could maybe send him out around a barrel, and then I could down him, because I felt that when he was running, his arousal level was going to be up. And then if he saw something moving, I didn't want him to obviously leave my ring to go into the next ring. And obviously, if we've done our reward stuff and the equipment is rewarding, that's also going to help, because if their job in itself is rewarding, they'll want to stay with us and do the job. But I also did teach them an emergency stop as well. Is that something that you do?
I haven't taught that. No, I haven't. I have seen yours and it's very impressive. But I haven't taught that. I think I only ever focus on, like, I don't tend to compete my dogs really quickly, so they'll do lots of training in the ring, so that I know when they leave the ring, all they're thinking about is getting to their toy at the end, and it doesn't matter what's happening or what else is going on around them. They know that toy's coming, and I practice when they leave the ring, they get the toy, and then I say, put your lead on, and they'll try and shove their head in the harness or whatever it is that and that's part of then this toy starts, the reward starts again, so that they're not going, I've got my toy, but then I'm going to look at everything else. They know that there's that routine on the exit. So if I felt something was going wrong, I'd be running out to my toy and be like, right, let's get your lead on, and the head would go through the harness, and then we clip them on, because for me, then I've got them under control straight away. So straight away with Vivid, the few things I've done is we go in, I actually teach, put your head in a harness or in a lead as a trick, so that when I offer it, she wants to do that. So it's already a behavior exists. I just then put it into our finish line routine. So I always play for a bit, quickly, harness, head in your harness or whatever it is, and then the reward carries on. So I think that's what I would do. I don't have an emergency stop, but as I said, yours is quite impressive.
It's funny though, isn't it? Because it's different dogs, you feel that you have to do different things. So with Bo, I had to teach him an emergency stop. I also had to do a lot of collar work, so that he would come, if I said collar, held my hand out, he would definitely come all the way into me. He was so herdy, he liked to stop out there and then look, whereas I needed him to actually come all of the way in. So I did a lot of work on collar, so that if I put my hand out and said collar, he would run straight in and put his collar into my hand. And I love what you said as well about the finish routine, because we don't just want to come out, play with the toy, and then stop the game and put the lead on, and then that's it. Because if they know that having the lead on means then more games, and it becomes more rewarding as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, you see, sometimes I have had someone work with me who's had a dog who would stop 2 jumps from the end because their finish routine wasn't strong enough, so they would be like, oh well, it's ending, I don't want to leave, thank you very much, actually, and then obviously would look to the other rings. So
Yeah.
it is really important for that, you know, your rewards at the end to be really solid, so that the default behavior is, oh, it's all right, my lead's going to go on and it's going to be okay. In fact, we're going to have a really big game and it's worth going there and putting that on, because otherwise, yeah, like it's the same, you know, it's the same with pet people, isn't it? If you put the lead on and then you're going home, of course no one wants to put the lead on, do they?
Yeah, then you can't catch your dog in the park.
Exactly. But also catch, you know, I
Yeah.
see people grab their dogs towards the end of a run, and it's like the worst thing ever, isn't it? Because then obviously the dog's like, oh, I don't want that. And then you've got the opportunity to start looking elsewhere, and that's when we lose dogs into other rings, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Routines are winners. Same on start lines though, isn't it? You know, making sure they're with you before you leave. Like if they're already looking at the next ring, you are already losing, aren't you? So transitions on the start line. I like to play with my dog all the way up to the start, so that we're on me, or doing tricks all the way to the start and then into position and leave. So there is no opportunity to be like, oh, that's exciting, next door, we don't want that, you know. So that's what I'm working on with Vivid right now, because she really struggles, particularly if there's a dog behind her on the start line barking its head off at her. It's hard.
Yeah, and I think as well, you know, we can all be responsible outside of the ring as well, can't we? With allowing behaviors or not allowing behaviors of our dogs around the edge of the rings as well. So they're not eyeing dogs, which is the typical collie thing, isn't it? But it can really intimidate some other dogs.
Yes, hugely. I felt quite frustrated, I think, at the last show I did with Vivid, because there was someone with a dog just literally letting it scream at her through the netting, and I was just like, okay, well, this is going to happen. So, and bless her, she so struggled to hold us the start position, because she was like, oh my god, like, you know, she'd never experienced that before, and that's part of the reason we went there. So it was an opportunity. But I just thought, you can see that that is really, my dog is struggling with that, because you're just stood there with your dog barking at the netting uncontrollably. And also, how's your run going to go if your dog, that's what it's doing in the queue? It's, you know, it works both ways, doesn't it? I mean, Fade would stalk the ring really strong-eyed, and I know that's intimidating, so I try really hard for me, because she won't, you know, won't have a great run if she's, you know, staring at the ring the whole time. And if, like Bright, you can easily let that happen, because she'd lie there completely still, looks really calm on the inside, is gripping the ground because she's aroused. She might not be demonstrating it by barking, but she's really high. And then when I get in the ring, well, it's not the performance I want. So yes, I don't like to let my dogs really hard eye at other dogs, because some dogs find that really intimidating. You know, the Bitsies of this world, my bearded collie that was fearful, that, you know, would be that would be tough for her. So I'm mindful of that with my own dogs. But again, for you as the person queuing, is you're not going to get the best result if your dog's just screaming at dogs in the ring, is it?
Yeah, definitely. Or even the eyeing, like you say, they can be silent when they're herding, so don't need to be screaming, do they, to actually show that they've gone that
glazed
point.
Over. Yes, over threshold. Yeah, exactly.
No, Bo definitely gets stickier at orienting back to me. He's obviously much better now, and I can stand him. Initially I used to stay well out of the queue. I try not to queue him for a long time near the rings, because he just enjoys watching all the movement, and he will now stand there still and he's not reacting, but you know that his little brain is boiling over, and then he gets on the start line and goes even faster and
explodes,
loses control of himself even more. So it's all those little things to work on, isn't it, outside of the ring, so that when you get in the ring, you're connected with your dog.
Yeah, absolutely, because the more connected you are, why would they want to leave you? You know, that's the thing. I mean, like I said right at the start, if you've made the game really good and you know, there's not too many pauses, then why would they look anywhere else? If you're going to stand there and be like, oh, because they went wrong, well, they're going to look for reward elsewhere, because it's not coming from you. So especially early on, it's really important to be as slick as you can be with your young dog in the ring, so that they don't have opportunity to make silly mistakes, you know.
Yeah, and I
Because
love that as
ultimately,
well,
yeah.
saying about like the transitions, because how many times does it happen that you get to the start and then the timing's not working? So then you're asked to wait. So if your dog's going to struggle, move them away from the start line again, and
absolutely.
then re-prepare. Or if something goes wrong on course, don't make a big thing out of it. How much can you just pick it back up and, you know, go straight back into it to keep that connection with your dog as well. Also, training shows, you mentioned that obviously you've been to a couple with Vivid, starting her out, then they can be so useful, can't they?
Oh, massively, yeah. So that, you know, they're there, you've got your however long, a minute or whatever. And if that means for her that, you know, for a couple of my students, I've like for their dogs, even doing a start line is going to be too much. So they've played out into the ring, done a couple of jumps, back on the toy, played out, finish routine, so that dog, the first time it's ever been in the ring, there's no opportunity for it to be bad or want to leave you, or, you know, and you've been really slick with your transitions, you've practiced your transition at the start, but you've done it in the middle of the ring so that they're more successful, and then you've come out of the ring and you've rehearsed that finish behavior, so that you know, all the routine about putting the lead on and all of that and continuing to play. Your first time in the ring, has been no issue, rather than trying to do 20 obstacles, it go wrong, them leave you, all of that stuff. So I think really I know it feels painful that you've paid that money and you're going to do about 3 jumps, but honestly, just see it as, you know, paying into the bank of success in the future with your dog, that it's going to really love it, because the first time it goes in the ring, well, that was fun. I got a reward for a couple of jumps and I left and it was great. You know, the next time maybe you will just do a start line and play on all the way to the exit and then finish routine again, so that you just do less rather than more, is what I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And preparing for we spend so much time training the agility or the obedience, you know, the actual bit, but that's a really small part, isn't it? It's all of the rest of it that adds up together, which is going to help you have control over your dog, and, you know, not affect others that are also there competing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just practicing, you know, going to the back and from the car and how that feels. And, you know, for the first time we get a new dog, they're all slightly different in how they're going to find it. And, you know, the first time you take that lead off from the start, I mean, it's silly, but I always feel nervous because, you know, you're unleashing them, aren't you? And of course, I always try to set them up for success, but it's just for them, they've never done that before. And so it's setting up good routines from the car, being focused, not lunging at other dogs, not, you know, for me, walking past cars without dogs barking at them and all of that stuff, so that, you know, they're not, when they go to the ring, they're in an opportunity where they can offer me all the behaviors I know they've got, basically.
Yeah. And also, you know, if you've got a sensitive dog or one which you're really working with to get things right, if something happens before you go in, then either don't go in or try and move back in the queue.
Yeah.
So then you can get everything back together again, so that then when you go in, you're going in with the best possible chance of success.
Yeah. It's just being mindful, isn't it? And, you know, I mean, anyone that will see me at a show, they'll know that I'm pretty ignorant when I'm at a show with my dogs, because all I'm focusing on is them, particularly if I've got my young dog, because, you know, all eyes must be on them and making sure that it is possible. I'm not going to stand and chat to you while she's busy, you know, lunging at the ring or whatever, because that's not what I want. You know, if I've got a more experienced dog, it's different, because they know the routine and they can take a little bit more, take my eyes off them. But particularly with a young dog, if they're out, I'm working with them and that's it. So put them away and have a chat, have a coffee later, but, you know, don't feel embarrassed about, you know, I'm busy right now. When people try to talk to you, or I'll talk to you later or whatever, it's nothing. I would respect that if someone said that to me, so that you've got, your dog's got your full attention, to set them up to be successful, basically.
Yeah. And, you know, we compete for us, really, don't we? Our dogs wouldn't mind if they were out running around doing other things. So it is our responsibility to look after them and keep them safe as well. But I think, so if you had to pick one thing for people to really work on to make sure that their dog is under control when in the ring, what would it be?
If you ask, eyes on me.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be it. So for me, the marker is, if I ask for your attention, you can look at the ring, but if I ask you to look at me and you can't do it, I've got a problem. So for me, that if I say your name, I expect you to hold my eye contact straight away. Or if you're at all worried, look at me. So I think that focus on me, the turn to look to me as a default behavior would be the thing. Because especially with Border Collies, if, you know, you've got their eyes, you've got them, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to add in about rewards. So know what your dog finds rewarding, because if it is at the moment looking at other things moving, then do your homework and build the value in the reinforcers, so that you've got something that you can use. And then hopefully that will then transfer onto the equipment and the job that the dog is doing. That's our end goal. But yeah, really think about those rewards and reinforcers as well.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, well, thank you ever so much, Jo. I really appreciate your help. I hope people have found this helpful, especially as we've now got a couple of months, well, 2 or 3 months before the outdoor season comes back in again. So, time to put in a little bit more foundational work with our dogs, to get them all ready for the outdoor season. Thank you, Jo.
Oh, you're welcome. Good to chat.